Rolling.
We exposed enough? I can't even tell, eh?
Yeah, I had a look through the viewfinder.
Yeah, right, sweet. I can't believe he's got a Pugglier on set. He doesn't even have a full breed dog.
Okay. Ready to get into it?
Yeah, let's go.
Sweet.
We both sit like this, that's pretty interesting, eh?
Yeah. Learned, man.
Yeah.
So currently on my way down to Cronulla to film an iconic bodyboarding event called the Shark Island Challenge, something that's been pretty influential on me. I've been watching it on videos and a couple of times in person since I was a teenager. And I'm going to be filming this with my friend Adrian Emerton, who I sit down to have a chat with on this episode. Adrian's someone I work with a lot, also a fellow bodyboarder. It's really helped me out since I moved to Sydney, helping me get on his productions and establish my network a bit. And yeah, it's gone on to become a really good mate, which is a pretty cool part of this line of work. You kind of try to work with people you see eye to eye with and enjoy spending time with. So yeah. It's cool that often in film production, the people you work with end up becoming great friends as well. So yeah, we have a chat about the industry, his journey, gear, a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, hope you like it.
Righto, so today I'm going to be having a chat to a mate and colleague of mine, Adrian Emerton. I'd say he's probably one of the people I work with the most. Work together on a bunch of stuff. I'm second cameraing for him a fair bit on productions that he's DPing that are multicam, and vice versa. But yeah, since coming to Sydney, Adrian's helped me out with getting me on his productions and also connecting me to other people in his network. Both come from a bodyboard background, so it was a natural connection.
Link up. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know what bodyboarding is, I'm making a film about it, so this is a plug for Common Thread as well.
Yeah.
So,
I said boog in my first version of that just then, but then realised a lot of camera demographic probably have no idea what I mean by boog. Yeah.
Like a boog?
Yeah,
What is this boog they speak of? Yeah.
Lid,
yeah.
trad.
Dragger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, do you want to just tell a bit of your story, how you got into filmmaking and kind of how your journey's been to get you up to this point?
Cool. Usually I'll start these conversations on a first date, so it's a little bit of a different context in front of the camera.
Yeah.
But no, I did design at uni, industrial design, and essentially knew that I didn't really want to be an industrial designer a couple of years into the course, but I thought I'd get a general design degree under my belt and learn some basic design principles. And as you mentioned, I grew up as a bodyboarder, and I was really influenced by watching bodyboarding films as a kid. And I had some mates in the Central Coast who were making bodyboarding films at the time, the Wardren brothers, and who actually still work in the film industry.
Yeah. Legends.
Yeah.
Also grew up watching their vids.
Yeah, for sure. And they really influenced our generation, I think, with like the style of bodyboarding. And this is almost a bodyboarding podcast, but just seeing mates around me like those guys get into video and film, I guess probably inspired me to do it when I was quite young. Not really knowing what I wanted to do, but I was like, oh, that looks like a cool job, you know? So I was never like a film buff or anything like that. All I wanted to do was surf as a kid, and I thought that one day I'd like to somehow get involved in video production. So I finished my degree, and it was a director who a mate of mine was a personal assistant for, and the director's called Rob DePere, and he was pretty successful back in the 90s and 2000s. He did a lot of sort of VFX heavy jobs, and there was an opportunity for me to work as a personal assistant for him. So a mate of mine was in that role. He went off and he introduced me to Rob, and then all of a sudden, at the age of 23, I was assisting this pretty successful director, commercial director, and I would live and work with him and jump on shoots and travel around the world and kind of get hands-on production experience where I knew nothing about film at all in the beginning, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was like, oh, this is a cool ride, like let's go. Yeah. So that was kind of how it initially started.
Yeah. Sweet. And what would you say have been some of your whether you call it filmmaking or career highlights along the way?
I think I don't know. I'd call it it's a highlight, but I don't necessarily know if it was my highest point. When like you and I were on that job we did around Asia we did like a music video for Google. We covered 4 countries in 10 days, and I remember this after the Indian leg of the shoot, I started feeling pretty crook coming back through the airport, and we landed in Jakarta for the next day. And I told the producer I was feeling pretty bad, and luckily you were there, and you were ACing me at the time, but obviously I knew that you're a good shooter in your own right, so you were able to step up and kind of cover for me while I was in bed with the worst sickness I've ever had in my life. All that aside, like I think that experience is those sorts of jobs are really fun. Like before the pandemic, actually 50% of my work was overseas. I was getting a lot of like travel doco jobs and that sort of thing, and I love being thrown into different cultures and kind of hiding behind the camera and just like shooting what I see. That to me is cool, just capturing life as it happens. Those sorts of moments are more memorable ones, I guess, when you're on the road and you're kind of put in these interesting environments with your mates as well, being able to work together. Yeah, they're the fun ones.
Getting your own room in a 4-star hotel.
Yeah. At least I was sleeping like a king. It was a palace of a place, but I felt like death. So
yeah, for sure. That was a solid one. I mean, it's always a bit of a trip out. The client is Google. You're in a country for 2 days. One of those is the shooting day, then on to the next place. It's pretty surreal kind of type of job to end up in.
For sure,
and you definitely trip out a bit thinking of, I think it's nice to be proud of yourself in those kind of situations, how far you've come, and that you're trusted to do that particular job.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, that was through a contact that I had that I'd done some work with in Sydney, and they had a production company that was based out of Hong Kong and in Sydney. So they reached out to me and said, look, we've got this gig. We'd love you to DP it. And also, would you be able to point us in the direction of a good young director? And that was when Gabe came on board as well. He was actually, done really, really well for himself as an incredible documentary director and also commercial director. He's a young guy that's got so much talent. And you're lucky to kind of like cross paths with these people that, have so much skill. And you try and learn what you can off them on shoots too.
Yeah, for sure. People often trip out when I'm telling them where jobs actually come from. I think it's interesting what Adrian mentioned then about, coming through a connection. It's always how things happen. There's not some really thorough production network that people are using to crew up productions. Things come about in pretty kind of,
for sure,
I guess you'd call it an organic way, because it's who do you or a connection of yours personally know, who you trust to come on this production and do a good job. So word of mouth goes so far, right?
For sure. You can just get a phone call one day from an unknown number, and all of a sudden you're on a plane somewhere like a few days later. It can sometimes happen like that. But it makes it exciting. Like, this is one of the reasons why I love this job so much, is because it's so varied, and like, you've got to be, like, it keeps you on your toes. I've worked office jobs in the past, and I knew it wasn't for me, so I'm lucky that I've kind of landed on my feet, being able to do something I love that also provides that kind of stimulus to just, think on your feet and get out and see the world too sometimes. So. For
sure. Yes, I mean, on that note, what are some of the things you like about this line of work?
Definitely the people I get to work with, get to work with mates all the time. And I love the finessing of the craft as well, particularly when you land jobs that have a a bigger budget and a bigger crew, and everyone has their sort of special department they're working on, and they're all really skilled at doing what they do, and it all comes together as like one, piece that you're all proud of. I love that. I worked on a job this weekend, which was I wouldn't call it one of my more sort of like creatively led gigs, but it was with one of my bigger clients, which is Fox Sports, and it was like a multicam shoot for them. A content piece sponsored by McDonald's, and I was kind of brought onto the job as a DP and work with their great internal team, which has young directors and producers and other people that we work with regularly. It's just cool to work with people that are on the same wavelength as far as like being optimistic, really keen and hungry to do their best. It makes it so rewarding, I think.
They've created a really good dynamic on that team. Having like your more seasoned producer directors like Jan kind of passing the torch onto the next generation, and like some younger people with a lot of creative energy, fun energy. And then getting to work with bigger brands like McDonald's. And who's some of the other clients you've worked with through Foxtel?
I did some TVCs at the start of the year and end of last year for NIB, health company. So a lot of the time when I do jobs for those guys, they're integrating with athletes. This was for a major sports partnership that NIB have with some of their AFL, with one AFL team in particular, the Tigers, and then the NRL team, which is Newcastle Knights. And getting to work with like top tier athletes as well is another perk of the job, because although they're in a very different industry, particularly those that are well media trained and facing, they're on a similar wavelength because they just love what they do. They work really hard at it, and you really admire what they're doing, but it's so far removed from being behind the camera. But there is a connection that you have with these people when you work with them. For sure. I always get inspired getting to work with sports people, musicians, even CEOs of companies and things like that on some of the more corporate shoots. You get to work with a lot of people who are top of their field in whatever area that is, and it's pretty cool. I guess it's kind of nice validation in a way as well, that people who are going well in their respective field are coming to you to provide your expertise on the video side of things. No, it definitely feels like you're doing the right thing, I guess, when when the dots are joined and you are working at those that are sort of better in their field. Absolutely.
So that's highlights kind of the job. What aspects of the job would you kind of say you find hard?
I think that, I have a partner at the moment, but we don't live together. So sometimes, and I've been in situations in the past where I work from home, you work from home. You probably have a bit more of an organised approach to your apartment. I don't know, because you live with your partner as well. But sometimes my apartment can go to absolute shit because I've got
the gear
everywhere, and like someone who doesn't quite get how much heart you put into what you're doing, they just see it as just a total abomination. From that outside perspective sometimes, and that stuff like that can kind of like slip you up at times where you might have back to back shoots, and you're like on a shoot all day, and you come home and you got to like rebuild cameras for something completely different. We got to go and get gear from rental company and come back. Then you got to like walk the dog and see your girlfriend and eat well, exercise. It can catch up on you for sure.
For sure.
I reckon that's probably the hardest thing about our job.
For sure. I find that as well. As much as I want to streamline the gear prep process as time goes on, it's the same thing constantly. Everything comes out, everything's all over the place, and then it ends up in these little packages for the day, a couple of cases, bags and stuff. And it's like, it seems ridiculous, but I don't know, it's just every job is so custom and so different. Just kind of how it is, I guess.
It is, yeah. It makes it interesting too, though, right?
For sure.
especially when you get jobs where like, okay, we really want to like give it this look. So you think about, how can I give it that look and feel? What are we communicating? Like, what lenses am I going to use? Like, am I going to use filtration? Am I going to use like, you know, certain rigging for the cameras? And like, you go down the rabbit hole of like, you know, different ways to approach shoots, and it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, for sure. Good segue. So gear, tell us a bit about your journey, where it started, and then where you've ended up.
Cool. I think I started, my first camera was a DSLR. It was a Canon C70.
Yeah.
And
common starting point.
Common starting point for sure. Especially people coming from like a surf shooting background.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that maybe I'll mention. Like I kind of, you know, spoke about that journey when I worked with that director, but it wasn't until, you know, probably 5 years after that moment that I actually started learning how to shoot myself. And to get into shooting, I mean, the first thing I wanted to shoot was shooting waves.
Yeah.
So I bought a 7D. I actually quit my job, moved to the States, and I bought an underwater housing and started like playing around in the surf, taking photos. But anyway, so that's where I started as far as the gear goes. And it was a great little body at the time. I could shoot, I think it was like, it was 1080p, 30 frames max or something.
Yeah, and then off speed in 720, so 60 in 720.
Yeah.
Which at the time was good.
Yeah.
Because that's the same as the HVX 202 did.
Right.
Which was a like $8,000 camera probably.
Right, okay, yeah.
Expensive camera at the time. But I feel like that was the first camera to do that well at a good price.
Yeah.
Because the 5D didn't have it.
Yeah. No, it was a great little solution at the time. And yeah, it was good for sports stuff because it had the, you know, Super 35 sensor.
Yep.
And essentially pretty much just I used like a 50mm 1.8 for so long, for like 2 years or something before I got any other lenses. And it just kind of taught me how to shoot essentially. And I, at the time, so, you know, I lived overseas for a bit. I lived in France, then I was living in France for 12 months and then sort of went on holidays to Portugal, took some photos in the water. One of the photos landed on the front cover of a bodyboarding magazine, and that really lit a fire up under me to start pursuing this thing properly. So when I got back to Australia, I had the opportunity to go back to work where I was working before I left, which was for a company that sold computers, but Apple computers. Essentially, they had a content role position that opened up. So I slid in there and started shooting little sort of corporate videos about kids using iPads essentially, and that was how I learnt how to shoot. Which is funny because I still do shoot corporate videos of and stories about you know, people using technology and that sort of thing. So that was where I sort of cut my teeth in learning how to film.
Yeah, sweet. So when you got a job coming up, you know, there's different types of jobs. There's day-to-day kind of, I guess, bill payers, and then there's bigger things. And, you know, I guess generally the kit you own is what you're going to use for, say, a bulk of your jobs. And then there's going to be other jobs that come up where you rent gear and things like that. So how's kind of your workflow at the moment? What cameras have you got here? What are you using those for? And then maybe talk about the productions where you will rent gear and what you'd be looking for.
Sure. Yeah, so at the moment I have a Canon C70, which I actually bought last year before a trip to Tahiti to shoot some surfing stuff, because I was looking for initially I was looking for a camera solution that would start replacing my Blackmagic kit. I had a Blackmagic kit for a while, an Ursa in a couple of pockets. And I wanted to sort of, you know, look at alternatives that maybe had autofocus, nice dynamic range, you know,
built-in NDs,
such a great little package, and pretty robust for what it is as well, except for this flimsy monitor sometimes. But so I bought that, but about 6 months prior, I bought a Komodo as well, and I was also looking for a camera to work as a B cam to the Komodo, and Canon color science and reds can be matched in post pretty well. And I figured that was a pretty good sort of A-B cam combo. The fact that on the Komodo, which I'm, you know, thinking about maybe upgrading soon, it has a global shutter, which is great for movement, can shoot internal R3D. And then whereas the strengths of the C70 is that like it's uncropped 120, which is great for my water stuff, internal NDs, autofocus, and a really nice C-Log 2 as log too. So they both have their strengths, these cameras. It's funny, I actually could probably get away with shooting lots of stuff on a C70 now.
Yeah. You said you've been pretty impressed with it. And you own the Komodo first, so I guess that's interesting context that you think the image stands up pretty well, right?
For sure, yeah, absolutely. And we have, peers that are DPs, guys like, Dave May and James Gillihan that shoot all on Canon gear, and they shoot amazing work, and I love 100%. The stuff that they do and the skin tones that these cameras can capture. And when I saw they were using these cameras, I was, interested because like it goes a bit against the grain in the Australian market where it's like quite Sony heavy for the kind of jobs that we shoot.
Almost international market from what I'm kind of hearing. Things like Drive to Survive and like that recent job I had where they requested Sony. It's
Absolutely.
true.
Yeah. It's funny that though, it's like you feel like this is the thing about like choosing the gear that you own and operate. It's like, do you want something that, the bulk of the market already has so you can potentially get on jobs where they might be shooting, say, on FX6s, and I think, God, am I kind of like shooting myself in the foot here by having like cameras from two different ecosystems?
Yeah.
Whereas
when
like
you could just be
straight FX6. I could have two of those, But at the same time, like that would, for my water stuff, that wouldn't really work for me because I'd have to go a water housing solution which is bigger and bulkier. I like smaller housings to get in closer to waves. And I love the colours that come out of this camera. I think they're better than the FX6s as far as like the skin tone rendition and just like, natural light whites and that sort of thing. Obviously it's not full frame. Yes, there's better autofocus on the FX6. Yes, it has that amazing ND system. Yes, it has has SDI out on the back as well, which is like a more professional connection rather than HDMI. But there are ways around that. And if you're getting jobs where I'm lucky enough to get jobs where clients come to me direct and I could bring on other DPs like yourself who also have maybe a red system, I know that the camera is going to match because we often shoot jobs where we have multiple reds and then a couple of Canons thrown in there as well.
Yeah.
And they all marry up in post, particularly if you're providing your client with LUTs too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I know that's worked well for me with the Komodo because I shoot with you a lot, I shoot with Dave Childs a lot. Both have Komodos, so it just works really well.
For sure.
For sure.
They're such a good value image as well. Like they are pretty much the best bang for buck. You can pick these up for about $6 or $7 secondhand now.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that you can get like R3D with a pretty contemporary sensor. Make it look really good, particularly if you control your lighting.
Yeah.
You'd be hard pressed to find anything within that price range that can match that image.
Yeah. Accurate colours. Like I know me and you have been pretty impressed in a lot of stuff. Feel like we had a lot of scenarios because I had a Pocket 6K as well when Adrian was a bit more, had a bit more of a Blackmagic kit. So that also worked pretty well for a lot of the multicam shoots we do. Blackmagics were generally great, but it was more common for certain colours not to be right, or for you to be a little bit unhappy with the end result, don't you think?
Well, I remember we shot this big job for TikTok. It was the launch of TikTok in Australia for their business, for their clients. So it was, we shot it as a TV show, ironically, for TikTok. But anyway, we built this huge set and shot it over the course of a week. And I decided to go with all Blackmagic cameras because I brought you on, who you had a Pocket at the time, maybe. Matt Creswell, who had an Ursa. I think I rented another Pocket and I had a Pocket and an Ursa. And we had like multicam, on sliders, on, gimbals, on easy rigs. And we could, we could mount the Pockets in, say a 916 orientation pretty easily. But I just found that on that shoot, and you know, although it looked great on set to most people's eyes, I did notice that, say, I think it was like, it didn't really distinguish very well between what blue and purple were. Like, it was hard to kind of separate those colours, and there were a couple of other colours within the spectrum that I was just like, maybe I'll look at other solutions after this shoot. Like, I was happy with it, the client was happy with it, but I just noticed little things where it just wasn't really picking up like sort of true to eye colours. So it was steering me in a bit of a different direction.
For sure. And I remember there's one shoot we did together where if you looked in the log part of the image, you could kind of see lines coming out from things.
I think that was a bit of a common thing with some of their sensors. I don't know if it was just certain ones that were being produced, or after a certain time they, I don't know, end up like wearing out and throwing lines through it. But there was one shoot where I shot it and it looked fine with the LUT on. And you couldn't really tell on the monitors in the log that there was anything wrong with it. But then when I brought it back into post, I could see there were pretty distinct sort of lines running through the log, and it was a sensor issue. And it's just one of those things where you can't really take those sorts of risks on commercial shoots. Like, we got away with it because you couldn't really notice it unless you were looking for it, but it's not the kind of thing you should be happy with as a DP.
For sure.
You need the equipment to be working for you all the time, you know?
Yeah. I had a similar thing. So like, that one I can think of. Out of objects, you'd kind of see lines, but then I had another one where there was actually scan lines and it was a sensor fault. I sent it back and they replaced the sensor. So this isn't a black magic, right?
No, not at all. They actually propped me up when I did. Yeah, look, I've got to regress here. Like, those guys supported me. I made a film a few years ago and they wrote articles about the use of their Pocket 6K in a housing to shoot water stuff. And that was great for me, a bit of exposure, and they're really lovely people. And yeah, nothing against the cameras. It was just more so like there were these little things that I sort of noticed, and I just can't really take certain risks, and everyone sort of has their things. Like, some people might be like, I can't take the risk of an HDMI port in the camera. So they might go FX6 or something like that. You know, it's just one of those things where I couldn't really, you know, take that chance again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm using one tonight on this job.
They shoot beautiful stuff. You know, like, you're still going to, like, I shot a whole film on a Pocket inertia pretty much, and like, it graded up amazingly. I was super happy with it.
I still love it on the gimbal. Pocket 18 to 35 for nighttime stuff. You can push the ISO. You can be on 1600 or so. 1600 plus a 1.8 lens. It's pretty good. And you've got all the frame rate options. Like, that compared to the Komodo, there's no weird crops. You can be at straight 50 or straight 60 frames.
Pretty cool.
A second, stuff like that. So still use Blackmagics, but these are just some of the things. It's minor stuff, but then it's, I guess at our stages of our careers, it is the minor stuff that you're getting paid to notice that becomes the difference between you and someone else.
For sure.
So minor to a degree, but also stuff that you have to make mental notes of. And
well, I can see why people, you know, would prefer to shoot on, you know, an Alexa system, you know, as opposed to other cameras, because they're just so robust. You know, you're going to get a good image out of them. Like, they're a real workhorse as well as being like a camera that produces incredible image, you know? So, I can see why people lean to that, as opposed to maybe like a Raptor or something else. Not you know, it's just like you need your tools to work for you.
For sure. And, you know, like with the Sony example, like, I get some people who are very comfortable with Sony, and so they just want to use Sony line of cameras. It's all just workflow and trust, things like that. So 2024, what's some recent gear you've purchased and coming up? What are you thinking about purchasing? What kind of gear are you excited about?
Cool. So I think like, there was actually a time when I thought, sometime last year, I thought maybe I'll just, you know, just go with the thousands of other DPs in Australia and around the world, and just get a full Sony system for what I shoot, because it would be a practical way to go about things. But I've held off, and I don't know. I have this gut feeling that the new line of cameras, the cinema cameras that Canon are set to release or announce this year, they could be incredible solutions to the sort of stuff that we do, particularly as like everything that can kind of, or something that can shoot everything that we do. So I do everything from like corporate jobs through to TVCs. Own this camera for a while now, knowing the images I can get out of like something like this, I'm just excited for what Canon might bring to the table next. Particularly as I invested in this 24 to 105 2.8 RF recently. And for a lot of the run and gun doco stuff that I do, like the gig that I had in the weekend where I was running all Canons, and I had this lens on this camera body built out on an easy rig, you know, had excellent autofocus. This in body stabilization in the lens itself is incredible. Like it brings this camera to life again kind of thing, and it works pretty well with the Komodo too. I was like pleasantly surprised. I shot a commercial on using this combo right here recently a few weeks ago, and it looked great. You know, like the colors are a little bit warmer than Sigma glass, which I have in the front of this one. But yeah, autofocus is obviously a newer generation of lens. The fact that you actually have like manual iris control on the front of the lens, and you know, you're able to sort of have preset buttons here to toggle between different settings as well. Yeah, it's just such an all-round great workhorse, and it's a full frame lens too, so I just can't wait to get this on a full frame cinema body. I think it's going to look beautiful.
Yeah, it's a real stills video hybrid.
It is,
I think they've had video people really in mind with that lens.
For sure. And it almost defeats the purpose of going down the line of something like a Zeiss 21 to 100, because those things, they have they're 3.5 to 4 point something.
Much slower lenses.
Yeah, much slower lenses. They're big and bulky. There's no autofocus. And you know, the image that I can get out of this lens is just, it blows me away.
Yeah.
For a lens that's, you know, about $5,000, it's such a good investment, I think. And I just can't wait to see what Canon bring out next. I think it'll be a great overall solution for a lineup of cameras.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess especially at that high end of things, you know, did my Burano review recently, and was just watching a documentary the other day which was shot on C500, and I was so impressed. I mean, it was a really nice grade, which helped, but yeah, as Adrian mentioned, our mate Dave May is also shooting a stack of Doco episodic stuff on that camera, and it's really good. I mean, I'd say it's got an image that's on par or better than the Burano, and it's half the price. So Canon definitely have a bit of a price range to work in, that if they drop a really nice A cam that's cheaper than the Burano, I think a lot of people will love it.
You know, I'm excited to see what Canon bring out next, because you know they come up with really good designs. I think the C70 is actually an amazing design, such a small package, and the image that you can get out of it, you know, it's pretty remarkable, and it's been out for 4 years now. You know, I would love to see one of these bodies, for example, with SDI out. Full frame, you know, and that'll do me. Full frame SDI out, and I'd be good, and a better sort of monitor solution maybe. I'd be more than happy to just jump on that straight away.
Yeah, for sure.
Every second breath we take comes from the ocean. It's the provider of so much for us as a species, as human beings. Surfers for Climate is a relatively young non-profit in Australia that is doing its best to turn the tide on climate change. It was founded only a few years ago to bridge the gap between that risk of an oil spill on our beach to climate change more broadly.
Yeah, so that's enough about gear. Just in terms of working in this industry, in film production, what kind of tips or advice would you give to people getting started or who might want to get into this line of work?
It's an interesting question. Like, there are different ways you can take this. I think there are a couple of things I tried to take on board when I was younger. I actually didn't put in probably the time I should have when I was in my early 20s to learn how to use a camera. That's one thing that, you know, to jump on that, to learn the process, to learn composition, lighting, all those sorts of things. Obviously, they're your trademark how-tos, you know, what you should know as a filmmaker or as a DP. But in the industry itself, to kind of keep current and keep getting booked, I think that make sure that you just, you know, work your hardest, you know, always try and over-deliver. Be as nice as you can be with the people that you work with and your clients. Know that you're there for them if they need you. You just always say yes to things. You figure out solutions. You know, if you can't do a thing, say, you know, you could probably try and figure it out and come back to them with a solution to that problem that you might not have known, you know, how to resolve initially. But, you know, using your network, your network's really important. And just, you've got to love it. You've got to be obsessed with what you do. I think it's like with anything, if you really love it and you've developed some kind of obsession with it, you can make it work, you know? So just put everything into it. If you really want to be a filmmaker or a DP, then just really let it consume you and just never stop. Like, make personal projects. You work on music videos. You're working on a documentary with Joel Taylor at the moment. You know, you've made that amazing film with In Heart's Wake. You know, there's things that you can be doing to kind of keep your career ticking forward and always try and push yourself into territories that you're not familiar with. That you're making mistakes, but that's why personal projects are so good, because you can make those mistakes. And then you can apply what you've learnt onto the commercial jobs. And you just keep leveling up, you know. But just people are probably one of the more important elements, I think. Like, really just try and be a good person and try and just make sure that they know that you're excited to work for them and to look after them, your clients, and you know, give good people opportunities as well if you can. I think we're lucky to do what we're able to do. And I don't know why I keep pointing at the cameras all the time. But we're lucky because they're actually, you know, I'd rather there were like two Alexa 35 sitting here, let's be honest. But you know, we're lucky to be able to do what we do, and I think you just got to really want it.
What have you got in the pipeline? What's some kind of future plans or goals, whether specific or just in a more broad sense? Like, where are you wanting to take your filmmaking and your career?
It's funny because, like I said, I was never really a film buff. I had no idea like where I wanted to take it when I was younger. I think that now I've reached a point where, you know, I produce a documentary and I'm producing another one at the moment. I'd love to be able to get to a point where I can self-fund the films that I'm making, or maybe get some kind of, you know, bits of investment here or there. And just have control over a process that I'm really proud to put out into the world. That's on a personal level. But then as far as, like, you know, commercial development, I love to shoot more TVCs. You know, I only really started shooting TVCs probably about 3 years ago, I guess. And, you know, each year everyone has their sort of New Year's resolutions, and you think, okay, I'd like to be doing more of this or more of that. Like, I'd like to be doing more TVC work, and maybe I'll want to get into drama or narrative down the track too. I mean, I'm open-minded to it. It's always fun being on set.
For sure.
It was never something in the back of my mind that I wanted to be, you know, a series DP or like shoot some kind of feature film or anything like that. When I was a kid, I just knew that I kind of wanted to get behind the camera and have fun with it. So every year I kind of evaluate like what I've done over the past 12 months and just try and keep chipping away at moving forward.
Sweet. Constant. It's a career that has constant progression kind of, and growth kind of potential, right? You know, like you mentioned the TVC thing, you know, I mean, let's be honest, it's a very hard world to crack. You know, there's like kind of, I wouldn't say gatekeepers, but, you know, I would say that there's a group of less than 10 DPs doing the big commercials in Australia kind of thing. So it's like people trust you to do smaller commercials and then bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's a, unlimited kind of potential, right? Which is pretty cool about it.
The interesting thing is though that, like, obviously, you know, the first half of this year in Australia has been tricky work-wise. Like, a lot of us have kind of, you know, ended up in a situation where we kind of had to, you know, maybe batten down the hatches a little bit, just be a bit conservative about investing in new gear and that sort of thing. And you and I have been lucky in the sense that we have some great clients that have kept our head above water.
Yeah.
But a lot of our peers have really sort of struggled, and I've noticed there hasn't been extra work coming in where it normally would come in.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've heard that there are DPs that only shoot TVCs who are selling cameras, who are like, you know, their rates have been lowered drastically just to kind of make ends meet.
Yeah.
Because I think that money is coming out of that like upper echelon, you know, commercial production stuff, because obviously everything's online now. I mean, and it depends on like how the market swings towards maybe you know, maybe the traditional TVC just doesn't get the same kind of ROI as it used to back in the day.
Yeah.
So the marketing budgets have gone elsewhere into like smaller content stuff or different forms of advertising.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's I guess our lines of work are in a lot of ways pretty linked to advertising, marketing, and the general state of the economy, and all that stuff's definitely changing a fair bit. Yeah, you can feel it this year for sure. Yeah. But I guess good motivation to always be adaptable and hungry, and I mean, like what you're saying, thankful that we've got those kind of regular clients and some smaller jobs just to keep things flowing along, not hanging out for those like couple of big commercials a year.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's good because even though they're smaller sometimes, you can still learn on those as well.
100%.
Yeah. So
it's good just to be shooting in general.
It's all
right?
fun. Yeah. It's all fun.
So upcoming projects. You're working on another documentary at the moment. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so I mentioned it briefly before, but I'm shooting a bodyboarding documentary project called Common Thread. And this is actually one of the things I mentioned where, you know, I had peers back when I was a kid who were making bodyboarding films, and that sort of like, you know, lit up a fire in me to maybe pursue some kind of career behind the camera. And I had in the back of my mind from when I was probably 14 or 15 that one day I wanted to make a movie that blew everything out of the water. And it sounds pretty cocky saying that, but like I had this thought and I had no skills at the time, but it's just a dream, just a kid dreaming. Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that's kind of like pushed me along, you know, to a certain point. And I feel like now I have the skill set where I can apply everything that I've learned professionally on set and on other documentary shoots, and actually like hopefully produce something that really stands out in the world of in surf filmmaking. About a community and a sport that I love so much. So so I've been shooting this for about probably 18 months now. Around different parts of the world, and have a select group of bodyboarders who the general premise is that they are amazing bodyboarders, but they also have these amazing skills outside of the water as well. Because you find that within bodyboarding, within the sport, there are so many creative people, for example. You know, you're a bodyboarder. Lots of our mates who are DPs are bodyboarders as well. And there's something about that sport that like just attracts a certain type of person. And it's not just people who are in creative roles, it's people who might be environmentalists or musicians or, you know, incredible, you know, ocean-faring people generally. You know? So the people in this film all have something else going on in their lives, and obviously bodyboarding is the common thread. But so I've got another probably shoot for the rest of this year, maybe another 12 months. And until I'm happy with what I have, and then move into post-production and hopefully release sometime next year.
Nice. I fully agree. It's nice being able to use the skills that you've developed from working day in, day out on bigger productions and things like this into your own kind of projects.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess that's a special one as well, because it's kind of giving something back to a sport that's given you a lot. And
I hope so.
Expertise and tools that you didn't have when you were younger. So,
It's funny though, isn't it? I made one a few years ago called The Chase, and it was something I sort of did through COVID because it was quiet with work. I thought it'd be a cool opportunity to make a bodyboarding film, and I look back at that occasionally if I like watch it with, you know, a friend or a family member, and I'm just so embarrassed by things. But it's that creative process though, right? It's like you're always like, you look back at work that you've done in the past and you're like, oh God, like, you know, you know, I can do so much better now. And so if you think that, you should really try and do the better thing, right?
Yeah.
You should always try and progress. And, you know, you can never be completely happy with what you do, but if you know that you put everything into it, then it's a pretty special moment, as you know, when you go to your own film premiere and everyone, you know, claps and is, you know, stoked to watch it at the end. It's a great feeling to have moved that many people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Epic. Well, I'll be slack to watch it.
Cool.
Cheers for the chat.
No worries. And thanks for having me. Appreciate it.